So there's two big components of our onboarding process with clients or implementation process. One is called a process optimization. That's like a whole systems review because we feel like systems are foundational. You've got to have accurate, timely financial information to base forecasting, projections, tax planning off of. And to get that, you have to have solid systems in place where people know what they're doing, how they're doing it. And so we go through a pretty robust review of their systems and look for ways that we can automate or integrate softwares and just really get to where we're doing this as efficiently as possible. So that's one big component where, and through that, you learn a lot, not just about the systems, but about why are we doing these things? And there's a lot of stuff that's like, well, that's just because that's how we've always done it.
Yeah,
yeah.
Exactly.
And so there's a lot of opportunity to find automation and to clarify roles and responsibilities and all that. So that's one piece of it. The other piece of it is to say, okay, what drives this business? What are the models in place? What drives profit and success here in this business? What should we be measuring and monitoring? And how can we tailor that back into the accounting system and the processes that are in place? Because if we don't capture it at the transaction level, we can't report on it. Or we report on it. What's happening is people have 3 or 5 other spreadsheets that they use to really know what's happening. When we could actually get it entered right at the beginning and pull the information out of the system automatically. So that's a lot of it. That's especially for those, what I would call lagging indicators, like the historical financial information. But the other components that are more leading indicators, like what's happening now in the business, we go through facilitated discussions with their key team members in the different areas of the business, whatever's so if you think about operations, sales, production, people, quality, all those main areas of the business, where are there crucial things happening and what can be measured and monitored? And so it's a facilitated process to drill down to what should those be and creating scorecards and getting visibility on them. Well, thanks for having me, Matt. And my dinner table as a child, it was a priority to eat dinner together as a family. So often it was all 5 of us. I have an older brother and a younger brother, and then my mom and dad. For most of my childhood, my mom stayed home. And for a lot of that, she babysat for other families. So she was always home. She was always the one to cook dinner. My dad worked and he'd get home and then we'd all eat. One thing that stands out, my younger brother, who's kind of a tail ender, he's 5 years younger than me, for the longest time, maybe up through when my older brother went to college, my younger brother sat on a stool at the table because we only had 4 chairs.
Okay.
And
table for the youngest, or no chair for the youngest
no
brother.
chair for the youngest. Like he sat on the stool, like it was a round table. So it wasn't like he was like off on the corner or anything, but yeah, so I mean, we weren't wealthy. We were very much middle class. And, obviously like we didn't buy a 5th chair when we had a 5th kid, a 3rd kid. And, but yeah, just a very close family, very faith-based family. We always prayed before meals. We always tried to spend that time together. And it was just a lot of, talk about your day. Tell me what's going on at school and how are things going. And that's how it was up until probably middle school. My mom went back to college to be a teacher. And she had also gone back into the workforce. So she was working full time and going to college full time. And so she had night classes and early morning classes. And so my dad started fixing dinner and we shifted to having pretty much either frozen pizza, chili, or anything in the fry daddy, like cheese balls, mozzarella sticks, So there was a season in middle school and early high school where things were different. We still ate together pretty much without my mom, but my dad switched to being the cook. But it was always very much a time where people were home and together.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. And so it sounds like you had some shifting dynamics there growing up. Do you think that any of it sort of played into growing the entrepreneurial tendencies in yourself, or did that not really hit you until later on in life?
Yeah, I mean, I think that definitely not having anything just being able to have anything I wanted is
Hmm.
something that, looking back, reflecting on, I think shaped me. I think there was a lot of wonderful lessons I learned, and good things. It's not like we were deprived, but if we needed a new backpack or a new pair of jeans, it wasn't that you just went and got them.
Hmm.
And so I do think that some of my choices around, what profession I went into and my desire to grow myself and to build things came from wanting to be able to have what I want to have.
Hmm. Hmm. Sure.
Just additional resources to travel and to have things. And I think some of that came from growing up that way. Um, I also think seeing my mom go back to school, go back to college as an adult, and having her be working full time, and she still made it to almost every basketball game, volleyball game. Like, she
Yeah.
might be there with her books while we're
Yeah.
on the bench or something. But I think that definitely showed me that you can do hard things. You can work hard, you can
Hmm.
prioritize things, you can endure things for a season for a greater good. And so I definitely know that I was shaped by those influences of my mom
Hmm.
and my dad growing up.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. And did you do college and all of that as well? Did you
Yes,
go
I
that path?
did.
Yeah.
Yep, I went to the University of Northern Iowa, which is known for their accounting and business programs, and have a
Okay.
really high pass rate on the CPA exam. So that's what drew me to UNI.
Hmm.
Once I knew that I wanted to go into accounting, I went to UNI.
That's a special type of mind that wants, like, actually says, I want to go into accounting. Like me, I'm like, I hate accounting. I hate anything about that, right? Other than, it's a necessary evil. But yeah, it's just not my forte at all. But you went to college, and did you start or join in with the group of accountants afterwards? Is that how you made your
Yeah.
your leap into
Yep.
the company you're in now?
Yeah, so the firm that I lead now, and am an owner in, is where I started right out of college. I actually
Oh, wow.
interned. I was they didn't have an internship program, very small at the time. And I was probably the first intern the firm ever even had. And then they offered me a job full time for after I graduated the next year, and I took that and came back. And so I started at TDT right after college graduation, and spent many, many years serving
Hmm.
clients.
Hmm.
Over time, I was able to build a new service line business unit within the firm and lead that. Um, been on our executive committee and into firm leadership. I've done lots of different things. So even though I've been here for my whole career, I've gotten to create things, change
Hmm.
things, lead
Hmm.
things. It certainly hasn't been same old for almost 20 years. It'll be 20
Yeah.
years
Yeah. It's
this
amazing how
coming May.
fast time flies, right?
Yeah, yep.
What the business unit that you said that you helped spearhead, um, how did you start that? Was that, just sort of testing the waters and saying, hey, I think there might be something here. You had a feeling that, there might be a need that the public had there, or what
Yeah.
was the kind of the catalyst to get that started for you?
Yeah, so it was our audit practice. So that's a service where we're, going out and testing financial statements of organizations, so we can provide assurance to financial statement users that you can rely on this information.
Mhm.
So it's a service that we did a very small amount of. It was kind of, so our practice at the time was heavy tax. So there'd be this compressed tax season, and then you'd have people like me with not a lot to do the rest of the year.
Yeah.
So we
Yeah.
picked up a few audits in the summer, and I loved it. I was like, I don't want to do tax work. I want to do more auditing.
You're a
And so
sick, you're a sick
I
person.
I loved it was a totally different type of work. You're out of the office, you're interacting with people. It's like a big job
Yeah.
for a
Yeah.
few weeks at a time. It's just a totally different rhythm. And um, so I remember saying, I would like to just do auditing. And I remember the managing partner at the time saying, I don't think we're ever going to be big enough that we could have you just do auditing. Well, after I got more experience with it, there came a time where I said, well, if I could do more of this work, could I, pursue it and develop a team that just does this and stop doing tax? And they were kind of like, well, I mean, sure, go if you want to try it. And so that's what I did. And I stopped doing tax work. The next person we hired, we hired them as just an auditor, and started from really ground up saying, what do we want this to become? And one of the things was, we did not want this compressed busy season. In our profession, people leave public accounting because of compressed busy seasons. It happens in audit too. So we were, for one example, we were really intentional that we wanted to do some different types of work that had deadlines that fell throughout the year, so we could just be steady throughout the year, and we wouldn't have to leave public accounting. And so that's how that came about. I really liked that kind of work, and I saw the type of expertise that it really required. And knew that there was a need for it if we just were, able to pursue it. And so that's where it started, and has grown into a significant component of the business today.
Yeah, I love that you both had the entrepreneurial foresight, while you're in the company, to be able to, start moving down that path, and obviously the leadership, gave you that autonomy to be able to go and, create it yourself too. Now that you're on the leadership side of things, do you approach things the same way? If someone, brings an idea to the table and, let's maybe look at this. I mean, do you basically, follow the same path today?
Yes, very much. And I would say it's almost an expectation of my leadership, that we should be continuously growing and evolving, and that we as leaders, whether it's a leader of the firm or a leader of a business unit or of a smaller team within, have to be looking ahead at where do we want to go and growing ourselves at a faster pace so we can be leading the way to get there. So it's for my leadership style, it's almost an expectation that my leaders are thinking about where do they want to go and coming up with ideas. And I'm a huge proponent of investing in training and conferences and consultants and coaching and whatever we need to figure out how to get there faster, more efficiently and effectively, and faster. I am all for that.
Yeah, no, I love that. Yeah. So we were talking before we started recording here. You guys joined EOS, which we've had many past guests that are part of EOS as well. So talk a little bit about what your company was like or looked like before you went through EOS, and then what came out of that process.
Yeah, so we implemented EOS at the end of 2018 with a professional implementer. So we hired an implementer. Before we implemented EOS, I would say it was maybe kind of status quo. Like we had some growth over the years through acquisitions of other smaller firms. The audit practice that we developed, that created a lot of growth. But we were at that point coming to the end of our original founding partners' time with the firm. So getting ready for that next generation of ownership and leadership. And it gave the opportunity for me and a couple of my other younger partners to say, what do we want this to be? What's it going to take, or what should this look like for us to want to stay here for the rest of our careers, let alone attract and retain other people to join us on this journey, especially knowing what we knew at that time about the high burnout rates in public accounting and professional services. So it gave us an opportunity to get really clear about who we are, how we help, and where we're headed. And then to share that with our team over and over and over again, these values that's who we are.
Mhm.
That's not just something we write on the wall. This is how we consider who should be on our team, who we should work with, how we behave. And so that I would say, after implementing EOS, it gave us so much more clarity about who we are and where we're going, which helps serve as a filter for all the strategies that you put in place to achieve those things, and for who you hire and who you have on your team. And then I would say it also gave us way more structure around and rhythm to planning and strategy and accountability that we just didn't have that before.
Yeah. Yeah. Would you say that you had all, and maybe this even is a question right now too, before you went through EOS, would you feel that you had enough people to be able to tackle the work that needed to be done? Or was it, or after you went through EOS, did you feel like, we're missing some spots? There's some holes here that, we've sort of identified, going through this process that we need to find people to fill.
Yeah, that's a great question, because that was actually one of the most valuable pieces of having a professional implementer, was that not too long before we implemented EOS, we had redesigned our organizational structure. So we used to be more siloed, geographically based, almost like a franchise model. And we'd gone to a firm-wide model by business unit. So when it came to the accountability chart in EOS, the people component, we're like, we're good. We just did this.
Yeah.
And our implementer kind of gently pushed at the beginning, and then before we wrapped up, kind of pushed a little further. And what we realized by the end of those sessions was that our structure only had two components. We had firm administration and client service. And we had these growth goals, and our sales and marketing was two coordinator level positions right out of college down here on the org chart under administration.
Yeah.
Like, where's your sales and marketing component?
Yeah.
And for us, it was like, oh, yes,
Yeah.
so
We're
that's
missing.
actually,
Yeah.
exactly. Like, if we want to grow,
Yeah.
we have to have somebody at the leadership level who understands who we are and how we help driving the growth. So that's when I switched from leading our audit practice that I had built to business development and leading our sales and marketing team. And then it was also a step towards the managing partner role that I'm in as well.
Yeah. Yeah. That I love. And it's always interesting, when you start dissecting your company in such a minute way, like, there's always holes that you end up finding. And that's, so I'm glad that, you guys were in the same boat there. So really interesting stuff.
Yeah. And I think a lot of professional services companies, especially, architects, attorneys, CPA firms, view non-client service people as overhead.
Yeah. Yeah.
Where I think most other businesses outside of our industry, it's like no brainer. You need to have sales and marketing.
Yeah.
And in professional services, just like, well, the people who serve the clients, they develop their own business. Well, not all of them. Like, we're not all wired that way. So
exactly. No, love it. So now that you've stepped into this leadership role, what are some of the things that you mentioned a couple of times, your leadership style and the way that you lead and the expectations and all of that? How do you communicate that with your team, with your, with the people that are, looking to you for advice? Like, there's obviously all kinds of different ways to be able to communicate that, but I'm just curious to see how you have chosen to be able to show that leadership ability. This is the direction that we're going, and then at the same time support the people that are looking to you for that leadership as well. Does that make sense?
I think so. Stop me if I'm not going the right direction on this. So a big part of it is through communication and meeting rhythm. So we have structured rhythms. That's what we call it, for communications that go out and meetings that we hold. So consistent scheduled communication and times to meet
Mhm.
is part of how we build trust and kind
Mhm.
of reduce the fear of like, what is happening? What's going on? When are they going to tell us anything?
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's part of it. And the other part is it creates opportunity for people to be together and for
Yeah.
us to share information, not just in video, not just in written form, but, in person, in meetings, through team building and personal development, professional development. But I would say in terms of kind of what all that looks like, what's involved with that, I am very focused on my own personal development and growth because
Mhm.
I believe that I need to be growing as a leader at a faster pace than the business is growing, or else we're not going to get there. I'm going to stunt our growth.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I anything that I learn and put in place and it personally that impacts me and helps me, it gets cascaded then to my executive leadership team. And once they've got it and it's helping them, then on to our team.
Okay.
So
Okay.
things like personality and the Enneagram, the Kolbe, EOS,
Mhm.
full focus planner, like any of that stuff, books that I read, podcasts I listen to, tools, methodologies, things that I've I try to execute it for myself first and then cascade it down through the team.
Mhm.
So a
Mhm.
lot of that also shows that we are growth minded. I am
Mhm.
growth minded. I'm not asking you to do some wild thing that I just saw online last week. This is
Yeah.
something that has impacted me for the better for the last 6, 12, 18, 24 months.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I want you to experience it as well.
Yeah. So, and I like that you sort of vet that as well, because I think that that's what a lot of people, it's a shiny object syndrome, right?
Mm-hmm.
It might not even be a problem that you have, but you see something and you think, oh, we need that, right? And
Yeah.
and that's going to solve all of our problems if we latch onto that thing. And um, it's great that you again vet that and you send it through its paces and trials and all of that before you pass it on to your team. Is there how many things would you say that you try that don't get passed on? Have you ever thought about like kind of
Hmm.
what the ratio is? Like, is it, you try 5 things and maybe one thing gets passed on, is that
Yeah, that's a good question. I've never really thought about it that way. Um, but I would say what I do pass on are the things that have had sustained impact
mhm,
on
mhm.
me. I know. So, are you familiar with Colby, Matt?
I no, I'm not.
Okay.
What is
So, Colby is an assessment. It's not personality. It's around like your conative way of acting.
okay.
And
Okay.
so there's 4 dimensions of Colby that get measured, and the kind of quintessential entrepreneur. So of the 4, there's 2 that kind of stick out for most entrepreneurs, that they're higher fact find and higher quick start.
Okay.
So they're not just like, you know, go out there and do something without any information. They
Yeah.
want to gather some information, but high quick start means that they are willing to take more risk and to change things.
Yeah.
So for me, I know that that means for me that with that high quick start, I'm willing to try a bunch of stuff and to
Yeah.
change almost for the sake of just like let's just
Why
see,
not?
let's
Yeah.
try it different. Yeah.
Yeah.
But most of my organization, because of my profession, is low quick start. They are
Yeah.
preservers,
Yeah.
not changers. So I have to be careful that if I push too much at them, like they
Mhm.
don't generally like instinctively want any of it.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
No
Yeah.
matter how vetted
Right.
or valid it is. So I for sure am not going to push something that I don't think will have a big impact because they just aren't collectively a group of changers. They're more of a group of preservers.
Yeah. That makes sense. But even though, so again, this kind of gets back to the point that I was making before, and you sort of do this differently. It sounds like where you might be that high quick start person that is going to hey, we got to try this, we got to do this, but the simple fact that again you go through the process and vet it before you take the time, somebody else's time, rather than, oh, this is perfect, let's just do this, and this is going to solve all of our problems, and then you know from my experience, looking and being in different companies and building different companies, when you try to make all those changes, and especially if they're coming frequently, you end up getting a lot of people that are so confused because, what's important, what's priority. I did it this way last week. Now I got to do it this other way. And now there's this new tool that's coming in. So you end up breaking the system, when you're so sporadic and all over the place. So, it's great to be able to test it and try things and see if it solves your problem first. And then, if it does, then pass it on. So, I love that approach that you're deploying there. So,
yeah, thank you. Yeah. I mean, I think, leading change, managing change is a huge challenge. And when a lot of business owners and leaders are hire quick start, if we don't recognize that that is probably more unique to us than we realize, not everybody thinks this way, not everybody is wired this way. We can wear our team out and decrease their engagement and increase their burnout just because they're like, slow down or stop, so being really intentional about what we put through is something that I thankfully learned, while I was building that audit unit. Because I would say in that season, as a younger, less experienced leader with a smaller team, I probably did more of like, oh, let's do this, let's do that, let's try this, and learned from kind of the wake of chaos that I created, here and there.
Yeah, no, and everybody has to go through that, right? That's personally how I like to learn is going through and experiencing it first. So, it's great that you experienced that and picked up on it and actually learned from it, early on, because again, that does make you a more effective leader than yourself. So, so what are some of the other things that you have, learned along the way in building your practice, being the person that's in charge of, bringing in new business and, business development and all of that. What are some of the things that you've learned, to help move in that direction? Does anything come to mind, off the top of your head?
Yeah, I think a couple of things. The first thing I would say that I've really realized more and more over the last few years is that really helping my team and our clients understand the greater purpose and impact of the work that we do has been transformative. I think without really recognizing that and putting words to it and stories to it and sharing it, people, even my own team, think that we just work with numbers. We just put numbers through systems and softwares and issue reports and returns, but really we work with people, and these numbers represent all the stuff that they're doing and can actually give insight and perspective about whether or not what they're doing is working and effective. And it can be used to support decisions that they make for their business and for their family and their finances. And so I think that was something where a few years ago, and I'm especially when I went from audit to firm wide, all of our services, and I had to kind of get up to that umbrella level of like, what is the big picture here of the problem that we solve? And that's where I was like, I don't think our people know this. And I don't really know if our clients really know this.
Yeah.
That there's a difference between data and insights and analysis. And a lot of CPAs are going to give you data.
Yeah.
And the value comes from the insights and the analysis and the ability to support the decisions that you make. So I'd say that's probably the first one that I would think of.
Yeah. And along those lines too, would you say that you need to have experience in whatever industry that they're in, or can you actually see those trends and those insights without necessarily having as much exposure into whatever that vertical or industry might be?
Yeah, so, I think the key. Oh, go ahead, Matt.
I just was going to say, like, so like, if you were going into a company that maybe you didn't necessarily have any prior history in their vertical, and you're providing these insights later on after looking at all the numbers and doing all of the typical CPA type work,
Mhm.
You know, I'm just curious to see like how you think about, creating those, those analysis reports for them, if you may not be familiar with that industry.
Mhm. Yeah. So we go through a pretty robust implementation process
Mhm.
with new clients where we are understanding their
Uh,
business model.
yeah,
Like, how do you make money?
yeah, yeah.
Where do you make money? Where do you make more or less money? How does cash flow through your business?
Mhm.
So some of that, the even if we understand your industry, there's so many nuances to what people specialize in or niche down to, even within an industry, that we're always starting with that, um, learning about the business, because a big part of what we do is putting, metrics and key performance indicators around what drives our clients' businesses. Like when we're going
Mhm.
to give insights and analysis, it needs to be, there's some where we're, doing visual presentation of historical financial information just because it's
Mhm.
easier for people to process that way.
Yeah, yeah.
But beyond that, where it really starts to make a difference. I mean, I'd say that's kind of the foundation. You've got to understand what's happening,
Mhm.
but where
Mhm.
it really gets transformational is when you can say, beyond what has already happened, what's happening now that's going to drive what shows up later,
Mhm.
and how can we measure and monitor that and report on that, and so that you can go from like running on your instincts and your intuition to
Mhm.
having that be supported by numbers and data.
Yeah, yeah.
Not, you don't have to throw away your intuition, but you can have them both together. So for us to do that kind of work and that kind of insight and analysis, regardless of the industry, we have to understand the business model for this business, or the
Mhm.
business models for each of your units, because some have multiple models within one business.
Yeah. No, I love that. I love that. What are some of the challenges, I guess you can say, that you've run into with people, delivering uh, that kind of deliverable? Is it, do you ever have like pushback? Oh no, that can't be true. That's not how it works, or that's not the way that it's going, or anything like that. Do some of those things sort of come to light as this process happens? Is that more common than
Yes.
not?
Yeah. Yeah, that's a great question, because yes, and it's actually something that we talk a lot about with clients, or if I do speaking or things, is that it's a very common blind spot as a business grows.
Mhm.
When you start to when the owner or the founder or the leader starts to have more people or outsourced resources handling certain things, is that they no longer have as strong as a handle on how things are going as they
Mhm.
used to. So they used to be involved with everything. So they didn't really have to look at the numbers too much because they knew what was
Yeah.
happening. They saw kind of everything going through. But as they grow and that gets more distributed, they don't really have an accurate gut feel anymore. So it's very common
Mhm.
to get to where you're reporting on information and people are saying that can't be right.
Yeah.
There's just no way.
Yeah.
And sometimes things are wrong. They've got people maybe entering data at the wrong, coding it the wrong way or something. But
Mhm.
most of the time it's just that they haven't recognized that as the business has grown, they no longer are really in touch with everything, which they shouldn't be,
Mhm.
or they're going to cap out their growth.
Yeah.
But what needs to happen then is that you do have a good system in place to get you and your other leaders the information they need so that everybody truly knows what is going on.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that makes perfect sense. What types of information would you need, I guess, since this is part of the onboarding process, what types of information would someone need to provide you to be able to start creating these types of reports and understanding, their company, their business?
Yeah. So there's two big components of our onboarding process with clients, or implementation process. One is called a process optimization. That's like a whole systems review, because we
Mhm.
feel like systems are foundational.
Mhm.
You've got to have accurate, timely financial information to base forecasting, projections, tax planning off of. And to get that, you have to have solid systems in place where people know what they're doing, how they're doing it. And so we go through a pretty robust review of
Mhm.
their systems and look for ways that we can automate or integrate softwares and just really get to where we're doing this as efficiently as possible. So that's one
Yeah.
big component where, and through that, you learn a lot, not just about the systems, but about why.
Yeah.
Why
Yeah.
are we doing these things? And there's a lot of stuff that's like, well, that's just because that's how we've
That's the way
always
we do
done it.
it. Yeah,
Yeah. And so
exactly.
there's a lot of opportunity
Yeah.
to find automation and to clarify roles and responsibilities and all that. So that's one piece of it. The other piece of it is to say, okay, what drives this business? What are the models in place? What drives profit and success here in this business?
Mhm.
What should we be measuring and monitoring? And how can we tailor that back into the accounting system and the processes that are in place? Because if we don't capture it at the transaction level, we can't report on it.
Yeah.
Or we report on it, what's happening is people have 3 or 5 other spreadsheets that they use to really know what's happening,
Yeah.
when we could actually get it entered right at the beginning and pull the
Mhm.
information out of the system automatically. So that's
Mhm.
a lot of it. That's especially for those, what I would call lagging indicators, like the historical financial information. But the other components that are more leading indicators, like what's happening now in the business, we go through facilitated discussions with their key team members
Mhm.
in the different areas of the business, whatever's the, so if you think about operations, sales, production, people, quality, all those main areas of the business, where are there crucial things happening and
Mhm.
what can be measured and monitored? And so it's a facilitated process to drill down to what should those be, and creating scorecards and getting visibility on them.
No, love it, love it. And you guys don't necessarily have any, specific verticals that you work in. You pretty well will help anyone. You're only really limited by the size of the company, essentially, or the growth path of the company at this point,
Right.
correct?
Right. Yes. So we serve across a lot of industries. We haven't niched down to any specific verticals where, we only do churches or we only do
Yeah.
restaurants. We have churches and restaurants and distributors and marketing companies and, just all across the board. Really what's best for us is a small, medium-sized, privately owned or family-owned business. So like not a publicly traded company, who is in that growth stage. Primarily,
Mhm.
we work with mature companies. We're not a good fit for startups, but people who are growing and are starting to realize I need better information to
Mhm.
make decisions. I think the other part of it is just kind of the psychological profile of somebody who is growth minded and they are looking for guidance and
Mhm.
information
Mhm.
to support decision making. So we're not tax preparers.
Mhm.
We are tax advisors and business advisors and outsourced accountants. And
Mhm.
so if you're looking for a more transactional relationship, we're not a good fit. So we really spend a lot of time up front in the discovery process and the pricing and proposal process and the onboarding process to make sure that it's a good fit, because we're not a good fit for everyone, but
Yeah.
for who
Yeah.
we are a good fit, there's a lot of effort that goes into building that relationship, because the value really comes from us knowing your business, because in a
Mhm.
lot of cases we're doing a lot of the work that a CFO would do, if you were big enough to have a CFO, but our clients aren't big enough to have a CFO. That's why we do
Yeah.
this. That's how, I
Yeah.
mean, we recognized the gap a few years ago and decided that's where we could better help our clients.
I love it. I love it. If Courtney, if someone wanted to reach out, learn more about you, your company, what would be the best way to do that?
Yeah, so they can find some more information about TDT and about me. We have a landing page set up for your podcast, Matt. So
Oh,
it's
very cool.
tdtpc.com/pass the secret sauce.
Very
So if
cool.
you go there, there's some information there about the roadblocks that growth stage businesses find. You can get pre-pricing on that process optimization that I mentioned if you're curious about what that would look like for your
Mhm.
business. And then I'm also really active on LinkedIn. You can find me on LinkedIn at Courtney DeRonde, DeRonde. I post a video every week, usually on Fridays, where I'm just sharing information or stories about kind of what's going on for me as a leader or a business owner, what I'm learning. So I'd love to connect with your listeners on LinkedIn as well.
I love it. That's great. That's great. Courtney, this has been fantastic and shared a lot of advice that I think a lot of companies, and actually real quick too. You mentioned there with the, there's some different pricing details in that. Are you guys, will you do the, I guess the process optimization as a standalone service,
Yes.
or is it kind of all encompassing?
We will. Yes, we will. We started doing that as a standalone service when we realized that, for some people, especially if you don't know us very well, maybe you just heard this podcast and you're like, well, it sounds good, but I don't know.
Yeah.
If you don't want to commit to a bigger long-term relationship and project, there's value in the process optimization on its own.
Yeah.
And it gives us a chance to better assess, are we a good fit for long term? And if not, you still got the value of having optimized processes that you can go forward with. But most of the time, so far all the time, people are like, let's keep going. Where can we go from here? So, but yes, there's pricing on there on that site that I mentioned, where you can just put in that, you don't have to put in your email address, just put in a few details and you'll get an instant quote on what it would look like. So you can see if you're interested. And if you want to talk more, there's a place to book a call with me too, and we can talk more about the process.
Yeah, love it. Courtney, fantastic. Love what you guys are doing. Love the direction, and congrats on all the success. It sounds like you've kind of taken the company by storm there and making it your own. So love it. Congratulations.
Thank you, Matt. Thank you. It's been really fun. Love what we're doing here.